welcome to 20 Voices of a Cochlear Implant. In this brief video, we describe our work to obtain an objective match to the sound quality or the voice of an implant. Quite simply, we've tried to crawl inside the heads of our patients and listen in on what their implant sounds like. Now, the stimulation received by an implant patient is abnormal by definition. It is electrical stimulation to a handful of electrodes in the cochlea. It's reasonable to guess that this abnormal stimulation will produce an abnormal percept. That is, the implant will sound quite different than it sounds to normal hearing listeners or hearing impaired listeners. The work was made possible by a new group of cochlear implant patients. These are patients who are single-sided deaf. They have one normal hearing ear and one ear that is deafened, and that ear has received a cochlear implant. Now, these patients allow us to do a very simple experiment. We can first present a clean signal to the implanted ear, shown here on the left, via a direct connect cable. Only the implanted ear can hear that signal, and so the little mystery is, what does that sound like? We can then take that clean signal and distort it in ways that might make it sound like the cochlear implant, and present that signal to the normal hearing ear, shown here on the right. At issue is whether any of these signals we make up sounds like the implant. Now, a few moments ago, I suggested that because the stimulation from an implant is different than that experienced by a normal hearing listener, the sound quality of an implant most likely would be different. Indeed, most likely would be poor. However, the results of peripheral stimulation are input to two major cortical processing systems for speech. One extracts the message. This is mainly a left hemisphere function, shown here on the left, and a second system that extracts voice, who's talking. This is a right hemisphere system on the right superior temporal sulcus, with a tremendous number of specializations for familiar voices, unfamiliar voices, extracting the fundamental frequency or the pitch of the voice, or vocal tract length. It's not unreasonable to guess that, given the knowledge that these systems possess about, for example, what a voice should sound like, that it could take a fairly messy input signal from the periphery and tidy it up, make it sound better. Once again, we get to find out. In our test protocol, we present signals that we think might sound like a cochlear implant to the normal hearing ear. Now, in the best of all worlds, we would make up those signals based on some model from what the distortions are that electrical stimulation impose on the signal. Our problem is that those models are in very short supply. And so to solve that problem, we've simply done a very simple thing. We've asked the patients to tell us how to modify the signal so that it sounds like the cochlear implant. Using this console, we can alter the signal in multiple ways. For example, we can change the voice pitch. A modest voice pitch would sound like this. First, you'll hear the original, and then the pitch shifted signal.
The sun is finally shining. The sun is finally shining.
Now imagine the patient says, no, that's not it. You need to flatten the intonation contour or the pitch. So that would sound like this.
The sun is finally shining. The sun is finally shining.
Now the patient says, no, neither of those are what I'm thinking of. I want you to move the whole signal up. It seems high in some sense. So we can shift the whole spectrum up, and that would sound like this.
The sun is finally shining.
The sun is finally shining.
Now imagine the patient says, well, that and a pitch shift might get me closer. So let's combine those two. And if we did, that would sound like this.
The sun is finally shining. The sun is finally shining.
Or perhaps the patient says, nah, I'm sorry, we're just not on the right track. Let's start by making it buzzy. And so here is our buzzy signal.
The sun is finally shining. The sun is finally shining.
And now the patient says, for example, gee, what if you throw all those together? What does that sound like? Maybe that'll come close. So we can combine all of these operations, and that sounds like this.
The sun is finally shining. The sun is finally shining.
Now, I emphasize that is not what a cochlear implant usually sounds like, not what an implant sounds like. It is simply an example of our being able to manipulate the signal in the way that we want to. Now, we're going to see Sarah working with a patient with our new sound console. Her aim is to get a score of 10 on a 1 to 10 scale, which means that the signal sounds just like the cochlear implant. The patient had a relatively short electrode array, that's important, and had only a few months of experience, and that's also important.
Do you like camping?
Do you like camping?
Okay, that robotic sounds pretty close.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really, the biggest difference is the pitch right now.
The pitch. Okay. So what needs to change in this ear to make it closer?
It needs to go a little higher.
Okay.
Do you like camping?
Do you like camping?
A little bit higher.
Higher. Okay.
Do you like camping?
Do you like camping?
The pitch is pretty close now.
Okay. What else is missing then?
It seems like it needs a little bit more static to it.
Okay.
Do you like camping?
Do you like camping?
That's better.
Better? Okay. Is the pitch still good now that I made that change?
Yeah, the pitch seems pretty close still.
Okay.
There seems to be just a little bit more of a metallic sound to the CI.
Do you like camping?
Do you like camping?
It's really close.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's probably one of the closest.
Oh, what would you rate it?
It's probably 9.5 to a 10. I mean, it's
Okay.
almost dead on.
A score of 9.7 or 9.8 means that Sarah came very close to matching the sound quality of this patient's implant. And this is a good description of our work to date. That is to say, we can come very close, but we rarely achieve a score of 10.